Hello again, I'm Enda Lee. This is my second tutorial looking at building MVC web applications using the Play framework for Java. In the previous tutorial I finished by adding two views to the site for index and about. We then loaded the corresponding pages in the browser. This tutorial starts from that point. If you need it, get the finished tutorial 1 site from this GitHub repository. This tutorial will look at the following topics. First of all, we'll look at linking pages together and linking other resources in pages, and also a navigation structure and how to build one. Displaying or using content such as images, CSS, JavaScript, or anything else in views. So that could be linked from the public folder, in other words, internal to the site, or from external sources like a content delivery network or just an external site. We look at site templates for shared page elements. So how best to handle things like a common header, footer, or navigation menu. I'll also show how to configure the content security policy. The purpose of this policy is to prevent cross-site scripting attacks by only allowing the browser to load content from trusted sources specified by the application. I'll start with my solution from tutorial 1. You see it here, Hello World, which I've just renamed tutorial 1. But in case you don't have this, you can clone it from GitHub. The solution is made available here. I've given you the link in the first section. So we can go to our folder, open a terminal, and then git clone the URL. So I'm going to paste that in there. And I'm going to pass another parameter, which is the name of the directory I want to clone into. So that will be tutorial 2. Now I should see it here, tutorial 2. I'm going to open up that in Visual Studio Code. Open Visual Studio Code from the app folder or app menu. Then file, open folder. We always open folder and tutorial 2, which you'll see there. Now just to make sure everything's working, I'm going to run this application. So in the view menu, integrated terminal, and then I can type in sbt run. It might take a little bit of time, so while that's compiling and building in the background, I'll show you where we finished up before. If I open up the app folder, you'll see controllers and then home controller, and in here we should find two methods, index.render or index, and then about, which is calling the about view. And then in the views folder we have index and about. These are independent pages, they're not linked together in any way, but they were just to demonstrate that we could add new views and the process of doing that. Also in the conf folder we have roots for those two pages. So get / will route to controllers.homecontroller.index, get / about goes to the about method in the home controller. The application is up and running now, so I'll test it in the browser to make sure both of our pages load up correctly. I'll start with the index page or just the root page. So localhost 9000, and that should load up the home page. Oh, that's weird. Oh yeah, I've got the address wrong. So localhost host isn't correct. Localhost 9000. There we go, home page. And then the about page / about should bring us to the about page. So that's great. Before I go any further, I'm going to tidy up the application a little bit. We have quite a few roots, controllers and views and a few other things that we're not really using at this point. The starter application includes all of this. If you need to get it again, you can create a new starter application. But just to keep things simple for now, I'm going to get rid of the ones we're not using. So I'll start in roots. We have this count and message demonstrating a count controller and also this asynchronous version of the controller, which are very, very useful, but we just don't need them for now. So I'm going to delete those and also delete the corresponding controllers here. So the async controller, delete that, and where's it gone now? So count controller, delete that. Also in views, we don't need the welcome page. I'm going to delete that as well. So the welcome page is gone. If I don't delete the welcome page, because it refers to those controllers I've just deleted, it would generate an error. So we need to get rid of it. Now I'm left with about, index and main, which we'll look at later on. We just have these two methods for now. And in our controllers, we have the home controller. I'll now test the site to make sure it's still working after those deletions. Sometimes deleting files and deleting configurations can cause problems, so let's make sure everything's okay. Localhost 9000. Again. Right, so we're getting this compilation error. Type count controller is not a member of package controllers. I'm getting this error because I deleted the controller, but it's telling me that the roots file is still referring to that, which seems a bit strange because it's not here. Until you remember that this little dot here indicates that the file hasn't been saved. A quick save should sort this out. I'm going to press Ctrl S. You can also do it from the file menu. And if we reload, we should see the home page. It has to recompile because of that change, but it's working now. And just to make sure About's working too. Great. Now I'll link the two pages together to give us some simple navigation on the site. Starting with index, I'm going to put in two links, one for the index page itself or the home page and the other one for the about page. I'm going to put this into an unordered list so that we can modify it with CSS or Bootstrap later on. Type in UL to get the abbreviation, press enter, and it will fill out that element. Then for each item in the navigation menu, that's going to be a list item in the list. It's good to build out the structure first and then fill it in afterwards. Less error prone that way. Outside of the navigation menu, put in a horizontal rule, just a horizontal bar between the menu or the navigation menu and the rest of the page. Finally, for each item, an anchor tag for the link. So if I type in A, press, or actually go down to link and do the same for the next one. So a link, this one's going to be the home page. Type in home, and this one is going to be about us or about us. Now for the links. We can check the links in roots. And in here you'll find that / loads up the index page and / about loads up the about page. And our links are going to be match that exactly. So get rid of the HTTP bit, we don't actually need it. And this one here, it's best to use relative links where possible. And that should be it. So if I save that page, test it in the browser, you'll now see a home link and about us link. If I click on this one, if I right click it actually to show you what it looks like, inspect element, you can see here href / and the one underneath is / about, as you'd expect. Now clicking on the link, that will bring us to the same page. About us will go to the about page. At present it works, but there's no way of getting back from the about page to the home page. To modify that, I'm going to copy this piece of HTML and put it into the about page. So just paste it in there. At that point, it's a little bit messy, so I'm going to press Shift Tab to bring it back. And it looks like I'll have to do that again. Shift Tab, it's lined up nicely. That doesn't really affect how the page works, but it does make it more readable and easier to maintain and spot any errors that occur. So it's always good to indent your HTML, Java, or whatever code you're using to make it easier to read. We should have the same content in both, or the same navigation menu in both pages. There's the index, there's the about. Just save those and reload. The index and about pages are now linked via a simple navigation menu. However, because the links are hard-coded, they cannot be tested until the page loads in the browser. This makes checking for broken links difficult, as all pages must be individually loaded and tested. It also means that all pages must be updated whenever a link changes. I'll demonstrate now. First, I'll demonstrate what happens if I enter an invalid or incorrect address in the view. So for example, the link for home is just /, but if I type in index instead by mistake, I'll try that again, which doesn't exist in roots at present. There's no index, there's just / and / about. So I would expect that should generate an error. I'll save that file and in the browser, reload, which in the background will recompile the application. Now you can see that no errors were produced in the background, nothing is shown in the browser as yet. But if I click on this link, just before I click on it, I will inspect the element and you will see here that it's /index. I'll now click the link and we'll see that the root or action isn't found for that particular request. So it's checked the roots and it hasn't found /index. The consequence of this is that we have to test all of the pages to make sure the links are correct. Next, I'll show what happens if I change the link in roots. Currently we have /about. If I change that to about us instead, save it, we'll see what happens in the browser. So I'm going to refresh the page. I'm going to go back to localhost 9000 and have a look at the links. If I inspect about us, you'll see it's still pointing to about. Even though the link says about us, the actual link is /about. Now what happens when I click that, because I haven't about /about no longer exists in roots. If I click it, I get action not found, same as before. Forget /about. And again, it's tried everything in the roots file and it can't find a match for that anymore. The solution to both of these problems is to use dynamic reverse routing instead of hard-coded links. This means that the links can be checked at compile time or updated at compile time if they change in the roots configuration file. To enter them, we're going to use the dynamic @ symbol and then look up the roots file. So that's @roots. We'll look up here, and inside here we'll see that we have two options. This is the links we've been using so far on the left hand side, and these are the actual controller methods. So homecontroller.index and homecontroller.about. So if I take that one, and inside here I put in roots.homecontroller.index and add on some parentheses at the end, and then do the same for about. That address will be calculated at runtime, or at compile time, sorry. So when it recompiles, if there's an error there, it will detect it. If it can't find a method, we'll show how it works first of all, and then I'll introduce an error. So if I save that, refresh my page, it compiles in the background. Okay, still can't find get about. That's because that's okay. I'll reload the root of the file. Now if I inspect both of these links, inspect element, / for home, that's correct, and for the about page, it's currently about us. Now watch what happens if I go back to roots, change about us back to about, and refresh the page. Now it's going to recompile and it's going to regenerate those links, and you can see that the link is now /about. So it's doing it at compile time. It's checking to see this roots file, finding this method, and then looking at which root is linked to that method. If I put in something that doesn't exist, so if I try to call a method, instead of index, I typed in home by mistake, it should also pick up on that error. So again, if I refresh, we get an error, compilation error. So value home is not a member of controllers.reverse home controller. So it's a nice way of picking up at compile time to make sure that I've got the links correct. I'll go back and fix that. So index, which is the name of the method, and it works again. If we compare the two views side by side, we'll see they share more or less the same content. Index and about share the same head section for HTML all the way down to body, and also the same navigation menu. The only difference is the content area. In the previous example, you saw that adding a navigation link or editing a navigation link required an edit in each page of the site. We had to do it separately in the index page and also the about page. That's not too difficult with a simple site, but as it increases in complexity and we add new views, it means that making a simple change will require lots of edits. This is inconvenient, it's also prone to errors and requires a lot more testing to make sure that the links are consistent and to avoid broken links. A better solution is to separate the content that's the same in every page. In these pages here, for example, you'll see that they're very much the same all the way down to the content section in both cases. That's all the same, or very close to being the same. And then the footer down at the end is also the same. So why not take that content and put it in a separate shared file, which we can then load up separately from the actual content we want to display. The views folder contains a file called main.scala.html, which is a site template created as part of the welcome or starter page or starter site. This is designed for common content. We have our HTML head section, then the body tag, and then the end body in HTML. And then inside here we have an @content, so it's a variable. There's another variable here @title. These are both passed to the template. At the very top you'll see @title, the name of the variable, and its type, a string. And then the other variable, content, and its type, which is HTML. These are passed into the template. HTML might represent the content of the about page or the index page or the products page. The string, the title string, is just the name of the title of the page, which will appear in the browser tab or window title. That goes in here in the title element. Now I'm going to adapt the main template for this site so that it contains the common elements in index and about. We'll start off by taking the content from the index page. If I copy that and open up main again and just paste it in there. So I'm just going to replace the content that's there. You'll see here that this is the common area. This stuff here, the navigation menu, our link to the style sheet, the HTML head section. Down here we have the title, which is home page. I'm going to change that so that we can pass in the actual title. Remember, this is dynamic. We're sharing the template between lots of different pages. So the title won't be the same. It'll be a variable and it will change depending on what page we're loading. If I change that to title, then we can send in the value depending on what we need. Likewise, this area down here is going to be our content area. I'm going to stick in a little comment here. I'm also going to put in a HTML variable which will persist to the browser just so that you can see what happens. So content area. Okay. Now to actually get the content, we use the @ symbol and the variable name is up here, content. We'll place whatever content we pass in this position just below the navigation menu. The main is now changed for these pages. And back in index, I'm going to make use of it, call it, delete all of that. I'm going to delete this message string here as well, as we don't need that anymore. And delete this bit here. So this is the only unique content in this page. @main, open brackets, and then we have braces. The title is going to go in here, so that's going to be home page. That's the first variable. And the second variable, the content, goes in here. When this main is called, it will load up this content here. The title that's sent will get placed in here. That'll be the title string. And the other content will become this here. The HTML will be passed as the content, the HTML object. So title will go here and content will go down here. I'm going to run that sbt run, as usual, localhost 9000. Okay, I'm getting a compilation error here. Not found value message. If you look down the content of the page, I deleted the parameter in this template. So it's expecting to find a variable name message. If you remember before, it had @message type string. I deleted that by mistake. So now I have the home page loading up. Now you'll notice that the home page here, index.scala.html, only has this content, but it's also loaded up the rest of the content from main. If I right click here and view source, there's our content area and the content for the index page. The rest here and at the end bit comes from the template from main, and it combines with the content from index. That means that we can share the content from main with the other pages. If I do the same with about, I'm going to strip back all of the stuff that we don't need here. We're going to call @main, this time about us, to how the title changes. There's our open brace for the other side. If I go back to the site, refresh the page, now it's bringing us to the about us page. You can see the title up here in the tab is about us. That's the title variable which we passed in, and there's home page. If I look again in the source, Up here you'll see in the title element it says homepage for that one, and in this one we have about us in the title. So that's the template working. And again, content area. I put in, you can see the difference with the HTML comment, which actually persists to the browser, whereas to demonstrate the advantages of using a site template, I'm first going to add a new page, products, and then add a footer to the template so that it appears in all of the other pages in the site. To add a new page, it's like before. First of all, we start with roots. Take the about root there as a copy as a template for our new page. I'm going to just paste that in. And the controller method is also going to be named the same thing. Next, we need to modify the controller, home controller, products.render. And finally, we need the view itself. I'm going to save about, that's the closest one we have to what the product page will be. Save that as products. And then just change a couple of things. First of all, the page title and the product page. Load the page just in case I've introduced any errors. Next, to add it to the menu. Now remember, before we had to go to the index page and the about page to add in those new links or changes to links. This time I can go to one place, which is the main template, and add a new link in here, which should then appear on all the other pages. I'll use reverse routing again. Products is the name of the method, and the name of the link will be just products again. And while I'm here, I'm going to add in a footer to the page. After content, I want each page to show a footer. So I'll add in a horizontal rule to separate it. Inside that div, I'm just going to put a paragraph in. Then notice I only did this in one place, and I only put the link into one place as well in the navigation menu. Once I save that and reload, it should appear on all of the pages. And because I've used the template, and because all the pages are based on the template, after one edit, it appears in all the pages. Next, I'm going to look at building a site template based on a Twitter Bootstrap example. If you visit getbootstrap.com and go to the version 4 examples, you'll find site templates which may suit your needs. So these are ranging from basic menus to layouts for maybe a products page or a form. I'd also recommend using version 4 of Bootstrap. You can select that at the top. It's the latest version, so it's going to have the most support from now on. The site that I've built based on the starter example and also the sticky footer is available on my GitHub. I'm going to copy that URL for now and go to my web apps folder and clone that. But this is a static site. There's no Play framework in this. It's just HTML, CSS, and a few images. I'm going to open it up in Visual Studio Code as a separate project. The other one is still open in the background. You can do that. It's no problem. Open folder and Bootstrap 4 site. And I'll show you what it looks like. So we have 3 pages. There's the index page, there's about, and there's products, and they're more or less the same site. I'll open it up. You can see it has a menu across the top: home, about, products. Contact page doesn't work yet. The drop down isn't implemented, but I left them there just to show what can be done. And then there's a copy of the links, which you may find useful. I have included comments in the static Bootstrap site to explain the various page sections. In the head, you will see 2 style sheet imports. The first is for core Bootstrap 4, and the other is for additional custom styles which may be required. The navigation menu further down is based on standard Bootstrap examples, which you can find documented on getbootstrap.com and the W3 School sites. The menu items are arranged in an unordered list, just like the Play framework example from earlier, which you can see here. The Bootstrap CSS displays the list horizontally and makes it responsive with the help of JavaScript. So again, here's the finished version. It's the same list, just displayed differently. As the page changes in size, the menu gets hidden away and then is revealed using a click of the little button here. You can also use the browser development tools to inspect the page, get more information. So if you want to see how a particular element is styled, just right click, go to inspect element, and you'll see the element itself here and also the CSS that's applied to it. At the bottom of the page, you'll find the common footer. If we go right down to the bottom here, you'll see we have a common footer area and also imports of the JavaScripts that are required. That's from jQuery and also from the standard Bootstrap JS that's required as well. Now, so far the content I've described is common to all the pages in the site, and that's where we're going to use the template for our Play Framework application, the site template. The unique content for each page is in the content area, which I've also commented. You'll find an HTML5 main element, and inside that you'll see the actual content here. So this is index, and in products you'll see, there it is, and finally the about page, same thing again, there it is. So we're going to take those contents and put them into the individual views for index, about and products, and the remaining parts of the page are going to go into the main Scala template. Back in the Play Framework application, I have the 4 views open: main.scala for our site template, index, about and products. This step will involve taking the content from each of the pages in the Twitter Bootstrap site and then placing it into the view, the corresponding view. I'll start with index, the home page, and cut that out. Back in the Play application, I'm going to replace the existing content with the index content from the Bootstrap example. That goes there. I'll save that, and then you should do the same for the other pages. So take the content from products and about here and bring it into the views in the Play Framework application. That leaves the site template. I'm going to replace the existing main.scala.html content with the common content from the Bootstrap site. So after I cut out the index content here, everything else is going to be shared with all of the pages. The easiest thing to do is just copy that and replace this content here right up to the doc type. That's going to go there. Next, I need to check any links in the site to make sure they work with our new directory structure. The site structure in the static site is different from the Play application, and we also have to take into account reverse routing and some of the other things we were looking at earlier. The first thing I come across is this link here at the top for the icon, the fave icon, and that particular file doesn't exist in the site at all, so I'm going to have to get that. It's here, copy and paste it into my images folder. So now we have faveicon.ico, and to link it in I'm going to use reverse routing, which is roots. It's a static resource, so don't forget the @ symbol, at roots.assets.versioned, and then in quotes images favicon, and close that and finish off the quotes. Don't get confused by the quotes, make sure you close them, otherwise you will get errors. This style sheet here is an external link, so we don't need to do that, but this one here is internal. Should also refer to the style sheets folder, which again is different. It's also a static resource, so we're going to use the same routing example here. I'm going to copy that one and paste it in. Now this directory is called style sheets, and I'm going to put it into main.css because this is the main template, and I want to just know that when I look at that style sheet I know it's for this template. So I'm going to copy the contents from the static site, get rid of one of those quotes. If I go to style here and get that content, and I'll put it into main.css. Okay, so there's other stuff there at the moment, so I'm going to replace that and save it. Okay, this navbar branding thing, my site, that's that link there. It's currently going to, there's a hash, so referring to the same page, but it's actually designed to be the homepage link. That's going to be another routing, reverse routing, this time to the home controller index. So roots.homecontroller.index. So we go to the menu links, navigation menu. We're going to have a link for each of the pages, index, about, and products. Contact doesn't exist yet, and if it tries to find the contact.html page, it will generate an error. So I'm going to put in a hash. This I can leave alone, and everything else looks okay. After opening the updated site, you may not see the results that you expected. The Bootstrap 4 styling hasn't been applied, and the pages look nothing like the static site on which we based the template. So what happened? When content doesn't load as expected, it's always a good idea to check the browser console for errors. You can do this by pressing F12, or if you right click on the page and inspect element, it'll bring you to this same set of developer tools. In the console tab, we'll see lots of entries here. Failed to load script, failed to load script again. So what's happening is that the external CSS and JavaScript resources couldn't be loaded. In the bottom of the template, this main.scal.css, we have those listed. So from jquery.com, cloudflare.com, Bootstrap, cdn.com. And this is where we load the necessary resources. Also up the top here, our main core Bootstrap 4 CSS is coming from an external source. Now the browser content security policy is generating errors, telling us that the page settings blocked the loading of a resource at this location based on what the policy settings are. I'm going to take a look at that in more detail now. The content security policy is applied by the browser and it helps prevent cross-site scripting or XSS attacks. These are a type of attack where a malicious attacker can inject some JavaScript, CSS or something else which may cause problems for the user in their browser. It could originate from a forum post, for example, where somebody adds some JavaScript to the end of their message. Then when other users load up that forum post, it displays the message but also runs the JavaScript, which can obviously cause problems. We set browser headers which define where the content can be loaded from. So examples are typical ones. By default, maybe you only allow content from the server that served the page that we're looking at. Or you may want to include content from other servers. In our case, we saw that code.jquery.com and maxcdn.bootstrapcdn.com were blocked, and we needed to get content from these servers. The policies can be set for different content types. We can have JavaScript policies using script source, CSS using style source, images with image source or img source, and fonts with font source. There's also a default which can be set for all content type, just the default source tag. This is the current default content security policy set in our application. So it's set to default source self, which means that it will only accept content from our web server. We can't link content from external sites, which is what we're trying to do. If you look in the browser tools under network, check the headers, you'll see that setting and how it's passed to the browser. So you'll see content security policy and then default source self. And that's what's been enforced by the browser. Of course, it depends on the browser whether it's up to the browser whether it wants to enforce it or not. But all modern browsers should do that. Also, in the console tools, like we saw earlier, these are the messages that the browser is displaying when it can't load a particular content type. So it's giving the reason. It's trying to access resources from these locations here. And then when it tries, it fails because of the policy. When we're going to configure a policy in our Play Framework application or modify the existing policy, and that's located in the application.conf file where most application configuration settings are located. And inside that, we're going to find play.filters, and then inside that, we're going to find headers. And yet again, in there, we'll find content security policy, a variable there where we can set the exact policy that we need. This is an example. In this example here, I'm setting the default to self, so that will apply, that overrules everything else. Style source to self, unsafe inline, which allows me, if I need to include styles actually in the HTML page, so inline styles are embedded in the page. By default, that will be switched off. If I do this, you will expect to find the CSS in a separate file, but just in case you want to add CSS to a particular element, that's how you do it. You need to switch that on. Also, I want to allow the Bootstrap CSS from this particular CDN content delivery network site. For scripts, much the same, self, and then I want to allow the jquery.com and Bootstrap scripts as well from these locations. And finally, for fonts, which may be required by Bootstrap, because if it's using styles, it may refer to particular fonts. So I'm setting the font source to be self and also from Bootstrap. To modify the content security policy for our application, I'll need to open the application.conf file in the conf directory. When you open up this, you'll see lots of comments in here indicating different settings which may be made. One of the reasons I used the starter site was because it includes comments, So you can see all of the possibilities and settings which you may want to use later on. The other type project you can create has an empty conf file and requires you to go searching for all the possible entries. So the starter site is good for that reason. If we scroll down the page, you'll find the various settings. And the one we want is filters. So we'll keep looking for that. I could do a search. There's play.filters. That's the section we want. And inside here, the part we're interested in the filter section is headers. Now you'll see here that XSS protection has been set to 1. And down here we have the content security policy, the one we're interested in for now. And this is the default source self, which you will see in reload the page. And you will see the header there. So we're going to modify that. That's what's been sent to the browser. Older browsers may not do that, but anything new or modern, anything created in the last few years should do it. To modify this, we need to allow scripts and CSS from a lot of different sites. I'm going to replace this one with this. Now it's quite long and it needs to be on the same line, which is a little bit awkward, but if you don't do that, it will generate errors, parsing errors in the script. So the first thing we see, I'm just going to set the name of the variable. Everything is enclosed in double quotes, so you'll find a double quote at the start and a matching one at the end. You can see it down the end. The first thing we'll have is our default. Now the default is set to self so that it overrides anything else. Or if you haven't explicitly allowed a script or something else, then this rule will apply. So if you haven't allowed fonts from any particular location, the self rule will be applied as a default. For scripts, we're allowing self, which is from this server, and also note semicolon separates each section. For script source, we're allowing self and also these domains. And note that these domains here are just separated by a space. They're not actually in quotes, single quotes like self. We have code.jquery.com and maxcdn.bootstrapcdn.com. That's for script. Next we have style, again semicolon separating each option. So style is the same, self, which will allow us to load style sheets from the public folder, which is always useful. If you don't include self, it won't allow that either. It just won't allow you to link anything. So it's important to understand how this works. And then our external source as well. Again, a semicolon, we're going to move to font source. And there's self and then the external source as well. I haven't included an option for image source, and that's where the default source self will apply. I can only link images from this site. I can't, if I try to link an image from an external source, it won't work. You can try that yourself. If I wanted to load images from a particular site, I'd have to add in an image img source entry and do much the same as I have here. So that should be it. If I save that and restart the application. Now, because I've made a configuration change, just reloading might not work. It loaded up fine. All the pages are linked together. Our menu appears correct, which is great. And I'll show you as well in the network section how the header differs. So our content security policy is now changed. It's showing us, oh, there's the full version there when I click on it. So you can see this matches exactly what I set in the configuration file here. I have included comments in application.conf to explain the possible settings for the content security policy, and also have a default policy here suitable for this particular site. That's everything for now. You can get the completed tutorial at this GitHub repository. This is also useful as a template for new applications. You can use git clone, get the URL from here to create a new application as you need.